And then everyone else posts these 30-year plans, and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow at breakfast time. So the plot, but you know, the plotting is fun. I'm not saying don't plot, because I think there's excitement in that. It's just, I'm kind of into a small dose of realism, so I encourage that. I know some of you are married or in long-term relationships. I don't know whether the partner in your lives is into languages or not. So some of you, depending on the degree of your addiction and the degree of disdain with which it is held by other people around you, may occasionally find yourself in a situation like the one described here, where you have one person in the relationship who is super into a bunch of stuff, and the other person can be sent into a frenzy of despair and excitement at the possibility that this says, by the way, for those of you who don't know this, is this a purely American phenomenon? Yeah. NASCAR? Okay, so NASCAR is where cars go around a track. That's my that's my description. And a lot of Americans, at least not in New York City where I live, but in certain parts of the country, are extremely into it. So this is like, but I know a lot of couples where there's a discrepancy between the level of interest of one and the other. And I find it really amusing to watch, actually. People hide. At the Polyglot conference in November, people were hiding their purchases from their spouses. I saw it. All right, then, there's a lot of anxiety among polyglots and language enthusiasts, I see. Polyfraught. This is when you have... I have a feeling that... Can you all see this? It says, I know only 6 languages, and that guy knows 7. There's a lot of language comparison. For example, even these badges are kind of a source, I know for some people are a source of anxiety. I really don't care about how many languages the next person speaks, because the joy for me is in the pursuit. There's something about it that I just find magically pleasurable. And I encourage those of you who have, you know, I sometimes see apologies from someone who, you know, people who have, oh, I just know French and Spanish and German and Russian and Japanese. Simmer down. Then we have a certain lack of fidelity. The two-timing polyglot. I know a lot of you know about this one. You start on one language, and then someone shows up with a book on something else, and it's all over for you. For some of you, this language enthusiasm begins in childhood, very early. I do think that some of us have an acquired taste for this, and some of us just kind of pop out into the world the way we are. I know people who are roughly, you know, chronological peers of mine in the polyglot community who've been doing this ever since they were born. I don't even know, well, all right, maybe they had to walk first. But they were going to libraries and finding materials that would never have occurred to me to look for. Maybe part of that is because Southern California is not the mecca of polyglottism, I would say. But I don't know, I think also it wasn't totally in me at the time. So some of you, all right, here are standard children. I want candy, I want a puppy. Then you have the polytot. I want all the Rutledge colloquials for my 5th birthday. Sometimes this language enthusiasm manifests itself in a somewhat different direction. And then you end up with the conlanger. I want to create the world's best language and see it adopted by millions. I actually have a special, I am not myself an active conlanger, but I have a special place in my heart for that community, so shout out to them, because some of the people who have designed their own languages, first of all, I consider it like an art form, like composing music. And some of them know more about language than practically I've ever seen. I don't know what they're talking about half the time. So I find them pretty impressive. Among our midst, we have some very gregarious, talkative polyglots. Also among our midst, we have some that maybe are less enthusiastic about actual human beings, which is which is kind of a funny phenomenon in a community where people are so bent on acquiring language, which is it's a communication medium normally between humans. Like there's the person on the other side, but not all of us are into that. The ones who are into that, the ones who populate, I think there's a New York, I forget the exact name of it. Who's in New York? New York event every 2 weeks, I think, in New York, where people go and they polyglot along. Those people are the Polyglot. We love people, let's talk to each other in all our languages, including endangered ones. But then, those people, at a conference like this, they might encounter the polyisolate. The polyisolate wants to learn the world's languages, for example, maybe to read all of the great works in all the languages that ever existed and access wisdom far beyond the bounds of the person's native country. I think that's actually really cool. I don't do a lot of that. I think I may be more in the other group. But I aspire to do more of that, so I hope it will happen for me in the future. The polyisolate toxin. All right. Then we have, don't be mad at me. Then we have the polyglot stud. I think some of you will recognize this. Can you all read that in the back? Hey baby, lose that monoglot and let me show you a little polyamory. We had a guy in the polyglots group, I don't know, some months ago, who was asking how to say, "You're beautiful, may I buy you a drink?" And I forget what the other one was, I don't know. Yeah, something like that. So it was like 3, sentences, and he wanted to know them in something like 4 languages that were totally unrelated. And it turned out that these are languages that he sees at the local club. So he wanted to be equipped for his, pickup program. Then we have another type. Very